Today we want to talk about the pros and cons of investing in Bitcoin. Paul, take it away. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we should point out, Peter, that Bitcoin's been the best performing asset over the last decade. It's not even close, Peter. It's a country mile. So way back in 2010, you could have bought the price of Bitcoin was about 10 cents, right?
Yeah.
It got as high as $65,000 right? It's generated over that time something like a return, if you got it right at the beginning, right? A 63 million % return. And we've got a chart in front of you which covers the last few years. You can see how far it's gone up. But you'll also notice in that chart, Peter, that it's now about 50% down from its high earlier this year. Yeah. So at about 32 to 33,000 US dollars. And we've got to be careful, the number just changes all the time. It's lost about 50% from its high of almost 65,000 US dollars.
But we're going to hold that thought. 63 million % in 10 years. Nothing can compare to that.
Nothing can compare to that. So I think that's worth just acknowledging up front.
Yeah. Let's go to the pros, Paul.
Well, look, let's look about why you might want to invest in Bitcoin. I guess the most important pro is that it's a fast and inexpensive international transaction. And that means the cryptocurrencies have really had a role because people were sick of paying bank fees, they were sick of having exchange spreads. This meant that through cryptocurrencies they could actually exchange money internationally with utmost security, no fees, and it was really does actually serve quite a good purpose, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, I guess you've got to say that it's the first cryptocurrency, and we know that the first of anything there's usually kudos, and Bitcoin is the most established. It's the longest around, and it's in a class of its own simply because it was the first.
Yeah, we saw it was Afterpay.
Yeah, we see that in most markets the leadership position is very different to the number two position. It has a low entry cost. Now, as I said, the cost of a coin, of one Bitcoin, is at the moment about 33,000 US dollars. You can actually, Bitcoin's been divided, so you can actually buy it into something as low as into 8 decimal places.
Yeah, that's a real
a point
big
0.00000001 of a Bitcoin. And means you can actually get invest as little as potentially $100 or even less to get a fraction of a Bitcoin.
It's a democratization of cryptocurrencies.
Yep, it's easy to get started, and there's some prominent crypto exchanges, much more substantial than they were when Bitcoin was first set up. So, and many of those are available to Australian investors. And then finally. Obviously, we've got the idea about high returns. I mean, if you look at that trend, even at $33,000 over the long term, it's still going up.
Very good. Yeah.
So there's believers think that cryptos will keep on getting more valuable. And one of the reasons they do so, Peter, is that the supply of Bitcoins is finite. Now, by design of the whole system, there's a limited supply of 21 million coins on offer. Currently, it's something a bit over 19 million.
Yeah.
So there's
2 million to go.
There's only less than 2 million Bitcoins to be mined, and then it reaches $21 million, and it can't grow. And that means limited supply potentially means if you get more demand, the price goes up.
Okay, let's go to the cons now.
Okay, well, I suppose from an investor's point of view, the main con is probably the volatility.
Without a doubt, that volatility is huge.
It's all over the place, and when I said it's around $32,000, $33,000, by the time you're watching this, it could be $40,000, it could be $25,000, right? We can see swings of 20% in a day, right? Not uncommon, and back and forth within a couple of days. So it is incredibly volatile. Secondly, it does face regulation. Now, you've got to be honest about Bitcoin. It's used by the underworld, it's used by criminals, it's the payment mechanism of choice if you see things like companies being held for ransomware attacks or in terms of drug syndicates moving money. It's untraceable, unregulated. And the underworld and criminals are using Bitcoin to transfer money.
And so it's bad for consumer protection, and the possibility of regulation is out there.
Yeah, so I think it's more than the possibility. I'm thinking, guarantee it will be regulated, Peter. But so that to me is a negative. It's digital, so and although they'll talk about the security of things like blockchain, there's a risk of cyber hacking, and we've seen. I think as recently the FBI been able to unwind.
They hacked the bad guys
and
got the money back from a ransomware attack.
And then you mentioned the no consumer protection. So we've seen in the early days of Bitcoin, if you're dealing with some of the exchanges, we had the collapse of some of those exchanges. Most of them are outside Australia. And finally, again, it's a fairly complex thing in terms of uses the blockchain technology. Most people, including me, don't really know how that works, and it can be hard to understand. So there are a lot of cons as well, Peter.
Let's go and look at one of the big things that would worry an investor: the volatility of the price. Why is the price, jumping around so much?
Well, let's look at the positives. What took the price up to things like almost $65,000? Probably the biggest thing was that more and more fund managers, these are people who manage money, have decided to own Bitcoin as part of an investment strategy. So a bit like a lot of fund managers own gold, some have started to buy Bitcoin as part of their portfolio, and just in terms of not so much a defensive asset, but just a way to invest because they're attracted by, they think the price is going to go up.
Yeah.
That's also been supported by people like Elon Musk, of course, the founder of Tesla. He's been a bit mixed on this, Peter. He's been both into Bitcoin, a lot of talk about acceptance of Bitcoin by Tesla. The next moment he's been worried about the environmental impact in terms of the mining, because the way to create new Bitcoin is through mining, which involves thousands and thousands of computers crunching algorithms.
Megawatts of energy.
Using hundreds and hundreds of megawatts of energy to do that. So he's got worried about the environmental impact. And then, of course, he came back again and said, that's okay now because in China they're using green energy.
Yeah.
But, so I guess there's a lot of spooky
it
still out there, right?
instability of price,
and I guess whenever he tweets about Bitcoin, that can send Bitcoin up like
down.
Crazy or down. So you've got to be careful, there is spooky. Next, we've seen just increasing talk of regulation. It will happen, and that's not too far away. China, of course, where most of the mining occurs, they've allegedly banned mining of Bitcoin, and that provided a negative influence. Now, when they say banned, we never know quite how bans are enforced in China, but they came out with an edict. They've also created their own crypto.
Which is not all that popular.
Not all that popular. We've seen impact on things like competition from other coins, so things like Ethereum and Ripple, and perhaps are providing competition. This is not one cryptocurrency, there are actually thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, so there is competition. Positives have been, a country like El Salvador's taking it for acceptance. I'm not sure that's a huge positive, but the crypto bulls tell you that.
El Salvador today, USA tomorrow.
And then finally, we've seen the impact of the tech sell-off, rising US interest rates. It was one of those currencies that many people talked about, a hot equity market. They labelled cryptocurrency in the same way.
Yeah.
When we got the sell-off, the cryptos sort of followed suit a bit. So it's still very, very volatile, Peter. And I guess if you're going to invest in this stuff, you've got to expect that.
Okay, so the bottom line is, Paul, are you an investor in Bitcoin?
Look, I'm not, Peter, and I guess I'm probably pretty conservative. I've heard the arguments. I've heard the arguments from people saying this is going to go to $100,000. It's one-way traffic because the supply is finite. It is the number one. It's where the market is gravitating to. There's increasing acceptance. Those things are all true, but I just think the regulation is going to come. I think central banks and governments will be forced to have their own cryptocurrencies. And inevitably, people will. I just don't think the fact there's a limited supply is enough to drive it. I think there's also problems about Bitcoin, as I said, about its environmental impact, and it's not exactly the most efficient currency. The time to actually update its ledger, when it does that, it still takes a while. So technology perhaps moved on. So. Look, it's hard to make a call. I just think you need to be super careful, and if you go into it, it is highly speculative.
Yeah, well, I know you don't invest in gold, and part of the reason is you can't be confident about the movements in price. I'm the same. I must admit at times I've looked at some stocks I've invested in, and I thought, well, Bitcoin would probably be better than those stocks. But I think the question marks out there still stop me from going out there and saying, yes, definitely go into Bitcoin. But I'm sure some people will give it a crack, and they may well be lucky, or they might not.
And the cryptocurrencies remind you a little bit of the gold bulls. I've never met a gold bear, but the price doesn't always go up. And everything I hear about cryptocurrency from people in crypto is it's how good it is. But I'm just a bit wary. So I think do your research and treat it as a real speculative play still.
Exactly right.